Imagine this. It's late, the kind of late when your apartment turns into an echo. The browser tabs look like small bright doors. Your phone glows like a loyal pet that never sleeps. You scroll past weddings, workouts, wars and waffles, and the word that should arrive enough doesn't write. The fridge is full, your calendar busier than a rescue mission. Your health app has turned your pulse into a leaderboard, and yet there's this thin, constant draft moving through your ribs. It doesn't howl. It just reminds. If this is what winning looks like, options, upgrades, infinite entertainment, why do you keep waking up with the taste of unfinished sentences in your mouth? Walk with me for a second. At work, you speak fluent productivity sprints, OKRs, dashboards, and still end most days with the feeling that you carried water in a net. In your friend group, the posts are tender and edited, and the silence between them is heavier than it should be. You've got playlists for focus, for sleep, for the version of you that drinks matcha and forgives. You own clothes for the life you meant to start last spring. Even your notifications whisper purpose like a brand slogan. So why does it all land like static? Here's the paradox. The more we define ourselves by access to knowledge, to markets, to other people, the less we seem able to answer the oldest human question without flinching. What is this for? You're told to follow your passion, but your passion changes like weather. You're told to be yourself, but the self keeps showing up in algorithm-approved costumes. You're told to make an impact, but impact is now a metric, and metrics do what metrics do. They replace the thing with a number and call it clarity. Maybe you've tried to fix the ache with elegant solutions, a new morning routine, a new journal with paper thick enough to hold your future, a subscription that promises wisdom in 12 minutes a day. Briefly, you glow. For 3 mornings you stretch like a forgiving cat and drink something green and sincere. Then the old draft returns, polite and relentless. So, why are you here? Not here on earth, in a grandiose, billboard way, just here, on a Wednesday, inside this particular body, among these particular people, with this exact life that keeps looking back at you like a question you almost understand. It's easy to blame yourself. Maybe you think you're weak, or undisciplined, or simply not optimized. But tell me, if the culture hands you a map that has highways to every destination but no legends, is it your fault when the symbols don't add up? We've been sold a myth of meaning as constant thrill purpose as fireworks. What if meaning, like gravity, is invisible and slow, and you measure it not by spikes of joy, but by how gently your days hold together? What if the problem isn't that your life is small, but that your measurement of a life has been quietly swapped while you were updating your apps? Listen to the little contradictions. You crave community, but when someone invites you to a thing, your first instinct is to check if there's parking. You long for depth, but you hold your phone the way a diver holds an oxygen tank. You want honesty, but every platform rewards performance. You want freedom, but choice without story feels like a maze where all the walls are mirrors. Is it any wonder your soul keeps tripping on its own reflection? Here is the unnerving possibility. Maybe the emptiness isn't a personal bug, it's a feature of an age that excels at how and avoids why. We have engineered abundance and outsourced significance. We can summon a car, a meal, a stranger, a song in seconds, but we cannot summon a reason that survives the dark. The market can give you 1,000 identities. None of them will sit with you at 3 a.m. and speak in a voice you trust. So the question isn't, how do I feel better by Friday? The question is older, softer, more stubborn. What do you owe your own life? What do you owe it besides efficiency, besides spectacle, besides the thin applause of productivity tools? What if meaning is not found, but forged, hammered into shape by attention, by limits, by ties that slow you down enough to belong? In other words, what if the antidote to the modern hunger is something embarrassingly unmodern? Vows, craft, place, the long apprenticeship, to a few people and a handful of true tasks. Hold that in your hands. Don't rush to fix it. Feel the weight of it. The way you feel a real book. Heavier than you expect. Exactly as heavy as it needs to be. Because the next move is not to grab yet another technique. The next move is to walk into the engine room of this emptiness and name the gears. Let's go there carefully, honestly, together. Start with a mirror you don't fully trust. The face you present when you're on. Jung would call it your persona, the mask that lets you move through meetings and birthday dinners without spilling your inner weather everywhere. You need that mask. Civilized life would collapse without it. But Jung also warns you about the roommate the mask keeps shushing, the shadow, all the disowned impulses, griefs, envies, tendernesses that didn't get a permission slip. You try to be endlessly competent, so your shadow hoards fatigue and resentment. You try to be nice, so your shadow stockpiles teeth. You try to be independent, so your shadow aches for care. You tell yourself meaning will arrive when the persona performs well enough. The shadow answers, with terrible patience, I'll be here when the applause stops. Now set that next to a line Nietzsche wrote, like a thunderclap, God is dead. He didn't mean a deity had a medical event. He meant the old architecture of meaning, shared metaphysics, inherited moral grammar, had cracked. In its place, we got a buffet. Choice sounds like freedom until, as Barry Schwartz points out, it becomes a paradox. More options, less satisfaction. You take a bite of this, then of that, then of the fancy thing on the end of the table, and somehow you leave hungry. Nietzsche's dare is terrifying and liberating. Can you create value rather than borrow it? Not copy-paste a template, but hammer a living ethic out of your actual life? The modern shrug replies, sure, right after I finish emails. Schopenhauer, gloomy in a way that feels oddly honest at 2 a.m., calls the engine beneath your cravings a blind will, a restless push that survives every purchase and politely asks for more. You know the feeling. The package arrives. You glow. The glow decays on contact with air. Neuroscience calls it reward prediction error. Your phone calls it people also bought. The treadmill isn't a malfunction, it's the business model. Add Weber's word disenchantment. The world loses its secret shimmer, gets divided into spreadsheets and APIs. That's not all bad. Antibiotics are nice. But when you trade mystery for management in every department of your life, you get efficient emptiness. Ritual becomes habit formation. Friendship becomes networking. Even grief gets an app. You begin to suspect that the part of you that knows how to bow has been outsourced. Meanwhile, your attention, the organ that makes meaning by choosing what to love, has become a public utility. The feed learns you faster than your mother did. It knows you click when you're tired, rage when you're hungry, and buy after midnight. It gives you a self made of small jolts. You are what you repeatedly attend to, William James whispers across a century, and the algorithm grins. Exactly. If meaning is the ability to sustain a story over time, then a culture that slices your day into confetti will make you story poor. Let's move from theory to a small life. Alex, who swore last New Year's to find purpose, now holds 3 purposes on a ring like house keys: a side hustle, a half marathon, and an online course in impact storytelling. On paper, it looks admirable. In the body, it feels like stage lights that never cool. At brunch, Alex says, I just want to do something real. No one asks what real means. The pancakes arrive, warm and persuasive, and the question disappears under syrup. Another life, Maya, who kept her family together while finishing grad school, can cry only during movie trailers. She doesn't know why those 2 minutes unfasten her ribs, but Jung would nod. The persona can't contest a well-aimed arrow from the collective unconscious. A single image, a hand letting go, A home scene from a train does more than a planner full of goals. The shadow isn't a monster. It's a storage unit of unlived life, knocking politely. When is it my turn to count? Philosophy keeps offering you frameworks not as trivia, but as handles. Kierkegaard diagnoses a modern type of despair. The self that can be anything becomes nothing in particular. I could move to Lisbon, learn pottery, start a newsletter. You could, but meaning prefers a narrower gate, commitments that limit your freedom in order to give it shape. Frankl, who learned meaning in conditions none of us would volunteer for, says, purpose arrives when you take responsibility for a task, a person, or a stance, especially where suffering can't be optimized away. It isn't about slogans. It's about a direction that can survive a bad week. Here's a quieter engine, status anxiety. You don't think you're competitive until someone your age buys a house with sunlight in all the right places, and suddenly your soul wants a tape measure. Late capitalism learned how to sell you not objects, but identities. Citizen, creator, biohacker, minimalist, complete with starter kits. The path from cart to meaning is paved with cardboard. You assemble a better self, take a photo, and still feel like a substitute teacher in your own life. Is the problem you, or a system that keeps mutating the finish line? Zoom out to culture. We lost many shared scripts and got you do you in exchange. That's generous and lonely. Without common rituals, your milestones feel private and fragile. Without elders you trust, your choices feel like guesses with receipts. Without a thick local story, a church, a neighborhood guild, a stubborn tradition, you're left with brand communities and parasocial kin, and even when they're kind, they dissolve when the platform pivots. Is it any wonder your bones keep asking for something heavier than likes? And yet, you are not wrong to want more than coping. The ache itself is a compass. It tells you two truths at once. You are not a machine, and you are not a product. You are a creature built to bind yourself to a few worthy things and carry them with patience, with humour, with the grit to keep repairing the net you use to fetch water. The net will always leak a little. Meaning is not about sealing it perfectly. It's about choosing what you're willing to leak for. Let's put all of this in one room. The persona that performs, the shadow that waits, the market that harvests, the philosophies that warn, the technologies that slice, the hunger that outlives the meal. If you keep treating emptiness as a mood to hack, you'll miss it as a message. Build differently. Not bigger, not louder, truer. What you build will vary. How you build slowly, attentively, with vows is the hinge. You don't need a new self tomorrow. You need a new way to treat the self you already carry. The question becomes practical and intimate. Where, exactly, will you plant your flag in work, in friendship, in a craft, in care, and say, "This is worth being tired for"? That sentence won't trend. It will change you. Keep that thought. In the next stretch, we'll walk through the subtle costs of ignoring it, the ways emptiness, left unnamed, quietly rewrites a life. You don't notice the erosion at first. Meaning doesn't vanish like a light switch. It thins like air at altitude. You still breathe, you just get dizzy more often. The first cost is narrative amnesia. Your days stop rhyming. Breakfast feels unrelated to the afternoon, Tuesday feels detached from Thursday, and the person who promised to slow down in the morning meeting is mysteriously absent by 9 p.m., replaced by a thumb that keeps scrolling. You're not a liar. You're just living in fragments. A life without through lines can't hold weight. Try to carry love, grief, or promise across broken hours, and you'll feel it. Everything sloshes out. Then comes the algorithmic appetite that never says when. Your attention gets diced into time confetti, 30 seconds here, 12 there, until even joy starts arriving in snack portions. You begin to prefer the anticipation of the thing to the thing. The book on your nightstand is exquisite in theory. The dinner with your friend is meaningful in the calendar. But novelty hits faster than depth, and your nervous system learns the wrong lesson. Reach for refresh, not roots. Hedonic adaptation does its quiet math behind the scenes. You bought the candle that smells like a forest. Now your living room smells like a forest, and somehow your life does not. There's a subtler danger. The empty self learns to fear stillness, because stillness turns up the volume on questions you'd rather outsource. So you protect yourself with motion. You rebrand rest as recovery and make it serve productivity. You make playlists for peace and measure your calm. You turn prayer into a checklist and call it progress. None of this is evil. It's just slightly off-key. The result is a constant low-grade hum of self-avoidance that feels like busyness and sells like discipline. Watch how it spills into love. You want intimacy that isn't a dashboard, but your reflexes are trained by dashboards. So you start tracking the person you claim to cherish, how quickly they text back, how often they initiate, what percentage of plans were balanced. The scorekeeping corrodes the kindness that made you want to score at all. Meanwhile, vulnerability becomes content. You share something raw and wait, not for understanding, but for analytics. You perform closeness and feel farther away. The paradox bites. Performance is loud, belonging is quiet. The quiet loses. Now, let's name some invisible taxes your mind keeps paying. There's comparison drift. You didn't intend to measure your life against strangers, but your eyes are open during the scroll and gravity works. Someone your age publishes a book, buys a house, speaks 3 languages, raises orchids, volunteers twice a week, and apparently never frowns. You tell yourself it's inspiration. Your stomach calls it something else. There's goal creep. You finish one thing, and the goalposts moonwalk. What was once good enough is now minimum viable self. There's choice paralysis, an abundance of options that behaves like a shortage of courage. When every door is open, none of them feel like home. Look at work. The company says impact, and you say it back because you're a citizen of teams. But when the metrics turn sacred, a strange moral injury begins. You cut the humane corner to hit the number, just this once, just until the quarter ends, which is never. You turn your craft into content, and your calling into throughput. Burnout shows up wearing productivity's clothes. You're performing more than ever, sleeping less than ever, praised louder than ever, emptier than ever. When did output become your alibi for not being alive? Let's walk through a few rooms and listen to the floorboards. Room 1. Ethan, who once loved building things with his hands, now manages a stack of tools that build nothing except slides. He's excellent at his job and allergic to waking up. His days are efficient, his nights are heavy. He keeps a box of screws and a block plane in his closet like contraband. Some evenings, he takes them out and holds them the way a monk might hold relics not to use, but to remember. He doesn't need a different career tomorrow. He needs the courage to admit what those objects accuse. You are starving for texture. Room 2. Priya, who can describe her values in impeccable language and can't feel them in her bones. She champions balance in public and negotiates with exhaustion in private. Her therapist asks where joy lives in her body. She laughs, then realizes that isn't a joke. Later, a neighbor invites her to join an improvised choir that rehearses on Tuesdays. No auditions, no recordings, no metrics, just air and mouths, and the ancient human trick of making something resonant together. She is terrified she will be bad. She goes anyway. Something unclenches. It isn't progress, it's proportion returning. Room 3. Noah and Grace, 2 people who love each other and accidentally turned their home into a co-working space with shared chores. They aren't fighting, they're drifting. On paper, they are exemplary. In reality, they keep postponing the conversation that would name the ache. How do we make our life heavy again in the good way? Grace finally asks. During a rain that sounds like an old movie on the windows, they decide to build one ritual that costs time. Friday dinners, phones off, one candle, one question each. Where did you feel most like yourself this week? It feels quaint and slightly embarrassing. It turns out, embarrassing is another word for intimate. Consequences bloom on the civic level too. When meaning thins, we import it often from outrage. Anger provides coherence on demand. I am right, they are wrong, therefore I exist. The feed happily stokes it because indignation glues eyeballs. You get a counterfeit belonging, a tight circle with a high wall, high on clarity, low on charity. Communities of contempt feel powerful, they leave you brittle. A culture that forgets how to sacralize the ordinary bread, work, vows, neighbors will sacralize conflict. It gives you something to wake up for, and something to burn down. Notice, also, the way emptiness edits your memory. You start narrating your life as almost, soon, after this quarter, once things calm down. Hope drifts into deferment. You postpone awe. The cherry blossoms do their patient miracle outside your bus stop, and you promise them a visit next spring. You treat the present as a lobby. The lobby becomes an address, and then there's grief. Not the cinematic kind, but the daily granular losses your era teaches you to step over. The friendship that went lowercase, the neighborhood that became a brand, the skill your hands forgot, the hour you promised yourself and paid to the scroll instead. Unmourned losses metastasize into cynicism. You don't become harder to hurt, you become harder to reach. All of this sounds harsh. It isn't a verdict. It's a diagnosis made with a steady hand and a soft voice. Of course you're tired. Look at the way the world asks you to live. Of course you feel hollow. Look at what you've been asked to worship. The point is not to invent guilt. The point is to recover gravity. So let's keep our eyes open and our hearts undramatic. No vows yet, no 10-point plans. Just an honest confession whispered into the ribs. I can't keep living as if refresh equals redemption. And then a promise small enough to keep. You will learn to name what mattering feels like in your body, so you can follow it the way sailors used to follow stars slowly, stubbornly, by night. From here, the path bends toward a different rebellion, not louder, but deeper. You won't hack meaning. You'll apprentice to it. And that begins in a place modern life barely remembers how to enter. A room with a door you can close, and a self you can meet without performance. Close the door, not metaphorically like, literally, a door. The rebellion begins with a knob you turn and a space that doesn't ask you to perform. Sit. Your phone will try to follow. Let it wait outside like a loyal but noisy dog. You're not banishing modern life. You're creating pressure and relief like a lung. In this small room, you'll do 3 things that sound old-fashioned and therefore dangerous. You'll choose a vow, you'll choose a craft, and you'll choose a people. The order isn't mystical, but the sequence matters. Vow, craft, people. You need a why, a how, and a who. Choose a vow, not a grand one, no cinematic speeches to the rain. A vow is a boundary you love on purpose. On weeknights, after 9 p.m., I'm nobody's employee. On Sundays, no commerce-only company. Before I look outward, I will look inward for 10 minutes. Make it unfancy and oddly specific. The modern world is a generalist in breaking promises. It doesn't know what to do with a person who keeps a small one. Think of monks, but secular and slightly under-caffeinated. They didn't become luminous by intensity. They became luminous by predictability. A little door, opened daily, becomes a gate. Alex tries this. He picks a vow that costs him because vows that don't cost are slogans. No phone in the bedroom, paper book only. The first night he feels medieval. The second night he feels deprived. By night 4, his attention, like a feral cat, begins to inch closer. He still scrolls in the morning. Fine. The rebellion is incremental, but directionally stubborn. Choose a craft. Work with matter. Clay, sourdough, wood, ink, soil, strings, stitches. You are not doing hobby cosplay. You are reteaching your nervous system how meaning behaves, slowly, with feedback, through error you can touch. Ethan, the slide artisan, clears a corner of his apartment and builds a crooked shelf. The miter joints are embarrassing. The wood smells like a pardon. He sleeps better that night, not because the shelf is good, but because it is there. Screens transact in speed. Craft transacts in presence. You begin to prefer verbs that leave residue: kneaded, carved, planted, lettered, mended. Your hands become accomplices in your becoming. Choose a people, not the internet's idea of community, the one that updates and disappears. A local, imperfect circle that can see you when you're unoptimized. Priya joins the Tuesday choir. They are gloriously average. Their blend is a miracle precisely because none of them could do it alone. You will have to tolerate friction, the neighbor who sings sharp, the friend who shows up late, the potluck that always has too much hummus. Love has calories, that's the point. Meaning thickens with repeated names. Now layer in a practice for the shadow, the parts of you you'd rather outsource. Give them a bench, but not the steering wheel. A simple script works. Name, normalize, neighbor, next. Name what visits you: jealousy, grief, tired hope. Normalize it, of course. This shows up when I scroll, when I'm overlooked, when I risk. Neighbor it, bring it into relationship instead of exile. Can you sit by me while I do the thing I value? Next, take the smallest faithful action your values require. You do not need to feel like a brave person to do a brave thing. You need a micro bridge from feeling to fidelity. While we're here, adopt a single ritual that re-enchants the ordinary. Candle at dinner, shoes off at the threshold, a bowed head before work, a 3-breath pause before replies, a hand on the doorframe when you leave the house. Let me be kind. Rituals are meaning's muscle memory. They keep you from outsourcing awe. Bring philosophy down from the bookshelf and into the kitchen. The Stoics are useful not because they are austere statues, but because they trained for turbulence. Pre-rehearse loss, not to become grim, but to become proportionate. You are not entitled to a frictionless morning. You are lucky to have a morning. That sentence will not land every day. It will make more days land. Meanwhile, borrow a line from existentialists. Freedom is not choosing anything. It's binding yourself to something worth your one life. Instead of, what do I feel like? Ask, what kind of person am I training myself to be? Build a rule of life, and try not to flinch at the phrase. It's simply a short list of scaffolds that protect your vows. Not goals, which are destinations, but rails, which are directions. Sleep window, attention windows, friendship windows, work windows. You are not mechanizing your soul, you are protecting it from becoming a hallway. Let's give you some counterintuitive exits from the cage. Subtraction before addition. Don't add a new habit until you subtract one drain. Inspired by designers who remove clutter to reveal line, become a minimalist of interruptions. One notification you turn off buys you a sentence in a book you'll remember when you're old. A weekly tech Sabbath, 12 or 24 hours off-grid, you will feel phantom vibrations, and then a sensation you don't recognize, quiet, that isn't loneliness. The first few times, you'll chase yourself around the room. Around week 3, your eyes start noticing weather again. That's not quaint, that's diagnostic. Your senses were not meant to be domesticated by glass. A physical third place. A library chair you abuse weekly. A cafe where the barista knows your unoptimized order. A park bench that belongs to everyone and you. Places lend you a memory when yours is thin. You need geographic ritual as much as digital hygiene. A craft apprenticeship. Find a person who is good at a slow thing. Offer help, not opinions. wash their brushes, sand their boards, sing their alto line. Meaning loves hierarchy when it's made of skill and care. You need elders who've buried pets and kept vows. A liturgy of repair. Schedule 1 hour a week to mend something torn. A sock, a hinge, a phrase you regret. Write the text you owe, fix the cabinet door, unconfuse the misunderstanding. Small repairs cohere a life the way rivets hold a bridge. And because the body keeps the score and then posts it, learn a gentler physiology. A 90-second breath window 4 counts in, 6 out down-regulates storms your intellect can't out-argue. Move your body in a way that looks silly and is therefore honest. Walk with your shoulders back, like someone you respect is watching from a window, your future self. This rebellion is not private only, it has civic spillover. Show up somewhere that needs your hands more than your takes. Volunteer where the work is boring and therefore real. Dishes, chairs, phone banking, trash bags. Platforms scale influence, neighborhoods scale responsibility. The latter is meaning's native habitat. What about work, you ask? You don't need to flee. You may need to consecrate. Name the part of your role that serves something beyond numbers. Clients protected, teammates steadied, juniors mentored, systems made kinder. Then carve a protected slice of deep work each day, even 45 minutes, where you move one real lever toward the thing that would make you proud if no one clapped. Shut the unnecessary tabs. The world will keep spinning. That's how you know it isn't your job to spin it. Make room for grief, not as an error message, but as proof you're attached to worthy things. Light a candle for what didn't happen. Write the letter to the version of you who tried. Thank them for keeping the pilot light on. Joy returns to homes where grief is allowed to sleep on the couch. Will all of this make you radiant by Thursday? Number, that's for serums. This is fermentation. The change you're after is less spark and more heft. Give it 6 unglamorous weeks, and you'll notice a different question showing up when you wake. Not, what's wrong with me, but what's worth me? The second question grows people who can carry Tuesdays, which is to say, life. Hold steady. You've stepped off the moving walkway. Your legs will wobble, and then remember. One more turn, and we'll name the insight that makes the wobble holy, the truth that puts the whole era into proportion, and your one life back into your hands. Here is the turn you've been circling without naming. Meaning isn't something you find like a coin under the couch. It's something you forge like a blade that fits your hand. The raw metal is your attention. The heat is your love. The anvil is your daily limits. If you keep waiting for a revelation to descend and knight you with purpose, you'll grow old in a lobby. Meaning is not a lightning strike. It's a hearth you keep feeding. You've tried to purchase the feeling from the outside in new tools, new titles, polished personas. You've tried to outthink the ache, to solve yourself like a spreadsheet. But the secret is simpler and therefore harder. Meaning is a relationship between a self and what it serves. Not adoration of your reflection, not worship of your whims, but a steady tie to a few things you choose to treat as sacred work that makes a dent, people you won't abandon, a craft that resists haste, a place you tend until it knows your name. Freedom, you discover, was never the open mall of infinite options. Freedom is the capacity to bind yourself wisely. You already bind yourself to the feed, to the metric, to the praise cycle. The final truth is not unbind entirely, which leaves you floating, but rebind to better things. When you pick a vow, a craft, and a people, you trade breadth for depth and find that depth is breathable. The air gets thicker, your lungs stop panicking. What about the shadow, the parts you were afraid would ruin the story? Here's the grace. Meaning doesn't require you to be stainless. It requires you to be in conversation. The dark weather in you isn't a disqualifier, it's a compass with honest needles. Jealousy can point toward neglected longing. Anger can guard a boundary that has waited years for a door. Grief can be the tribute you pay to love's actual mass. When you name, normalize, neighbor, and take the next faithful step, your shadow stops vandalizing the house and starts helping you carry furniture. And the culture, it will keep selling you velocity and calling it aliveness. It will keep offering outrage as purpose, because outrage is cheap and coherent. It will keep slicing your hours and renting the pieces back. You don't have to fight the entire weather system. You only have to build a climate around your life that can survive the forecast. That climate is made of rituals you repeat when you don't feel like it, chairs you sit in when the glow beckons, people you feed and forgive, work you do even when no one claps. Meaning is heavy. That's why it holds. Picture one ordinary morning. You wake before your inbox knows you're awake. The room is still. You touch the same small rule you touched yesterday. 3 breaths longer on the exhale than on the inhale. Your shoulders remember a human set. You brew what you brew and let the kettle be a bell. On the table is your unglamorous craft, the flawed shelf, the messy manuscript, the patient plant, the cheap instrument that can't be hurried without becoming something else. You give it 45 minutes. There is no audience, and therefore no applause, and therefore, astonishingly, no fraud. The work looks back at you and says, I am changing you while you thought you were making me. Later, you will enter the world's noise. You will answer messages, meet the metric, wash the dishes, choose not to clap back. You will fail at your small vows and then keep them anyway tomorrow. You will light a candle at dinner for the loss you're tired of carrying alone, for the friend who isn't calling, for the part of you that wants to quit, for the part of you that chose to stay. You will ask someone you love one real question and listen until they finish the version of the answer they didn't intend to say out loud. You will repair something tiny and call it practice. Across weeks, the shape of your days will begin to rhyme. Rhymes make memory, memory makes story, story makes meaning. You'll notice your appetite for novelty soften. You'll reach less for refresh and more for roots. The algorithm will still exist, so will your agency. A curious thing will happen to comparison. It will sting and then inform. Instead of, why not me? You'll hear, what does that wake in me, and where can I place that heat? The tape measure will return to the drawer. Your hands will prefer wood to metrics, faces to avatars, Friday dinners to performative sincerity. None of this insulates you from pain. It contextualizes it. When loss finds you as it will, you'll have rails strong enough to carry the weight. Commitment doesn't erase suffering. It gives suffering somewhere to go. Frankl was right. When you say yes to a task, a person, or a stance big enough to outlast your moods, your life stops being a weather report and starts being a pilgrimage. Pilgrims aren't giddy, they're faithful. They take the next step with blisters and songs. You may ask, but what if there isn't a grand cosmic reason? Then your dignified answer is this: I will be the kind of person who makes small reasons real. I will keep this street clean. I will learn this craft until kindness enters my touch. I will be someone the vulnerable can predict. I will let beauty interrupt me, a sky stupid with colour at the bus stop, a cello bending a room into silence, a toddler offering a raisin like a sacrament. Transcendence doesn't only descend, sometimes it accumulates, flake by faithful flake, on ordinary ground. If you need a sentence to carry, try this one. Choose what you are willing to be tired for. Choose it with open eyes. Choose it again when you're bored. When you forget, let ritual remember for you. When you fall, make the ground part of the practice. Breathe, apologize, repair, return. The persona will still be useful, it just won't be in charge. The shadow will still knock, it will find a chair, the world will still rush, you will walk. And one night, maybe soon, maybe after a season of unremarkable Tuesdays, you'll catch yourself in a quiet kitchen, rinsing a cup, and notice a feeling that doesn't need a filter, Not ecstasy, not triumph. Something older and sturdier. The word that comes is with. With this work, with these people, with this place, with this God or this good. You realize the opposite of meaninglessness was never intensity. It was companionship with your life as it actually is. That recognition won't make the era less frantic. It will make you less fungible. You won't be a product passing through platforms. You'll be a person passing through time, leaving weight where you stand. The horizon will still glitter with alternatives. You'll let it. You have a hearth to tend. So tomorrow, when the day arrives disguised as ordinary, you'll do what meaning makers have always done. You'll open the door, step into the weather, and carry what you chose to love. The load will be real, so will the warmth. And somewhere, in the middle of the mess, a laugh at a table, the smell of cut wood, the click of a light switched off, with care you'll remember. You didn't find purpose, you built it. Quietly, patiently. Like a star you can walk by.